had this old buddy in high school, Ryan. The kid would study his butt off. He and I would sit there at lunch, crushing through flashcards, and whenever I quizzed him, he seemed to know everything. But then somehow he'd end up getting mediocre results on the actual test because he just wasn't getting his game face on and connecting with what the teacher was looking for on the exam. That was until Miss Busco gave us all a little workshop about the art and science of taking a test. And Ryan not only ended up acing the rest of high school, but eventually college and law school too. And now he's killing it in his career as a lawyer. If you're curious about what Miss Busco told us in that test-taking workshop, I am going to tell you in this video. I'm Andrew with Brainscape, an adaptive flashcard app with decades of experience helping people ace their exams. And while our app and most of our other videos on this channel have been about study tips, today we're going to talk about the zen of performing well on the actual exam day. Our first tip is to take care of your personal biology. Like in the few hours before the test, have a light snack, but avoid carbs and don't get too full. Make sure you have a little water, but not too much because you also don't want a full bladder. And then in the minutes right before you go into your exam room, make sure you use the bathroom, do some stretches, move your body a little bit, and fill up your water bottle if you're someone who gets distracted by thirst. The key is that you don't want any biological functions or urges to mess with your focus during the actual test. Assuming you've taken care of the body business, then if you do happen to have 10 or 20 minutes free before you enter the lion's den, it's probably also a good idea to at least prime your brain by looking at the content one last time, whether you had studied well or not. This will help avoid that annoying tip of the tongue feeling that can happen if you haven't looked at the material in a day or so. Of course, a last-minute review session will be easiest if you have already chopped up your studies into the hardest and most important nuggets that you need to focus on, rather than just scanning your whole textbook chapter or lecture slides again from beginning to end. Turns out that Brainscape is a great way to chop up your knowledge. If you've been using Brainscape already in the days before the test, then any flashcards you had already marked as low confidence will automatically be the ones that show up the most often during that quick last-minute refresher session before the test. Just make sure you're not studying right up until your instructor tells everyone to shut up and put your materials away, or that you're also not talking to your friends right until the last second either. Because once you actually sit down in the exam room, you're going to want at least 1 minute or so for our next tip, which is to prep your mindset. Ms. Busco was always real big on this in her test-taking workshops that she gave us in high school. What this basically means is to take deep breaths and remember, this test is not the most important thing in the entire world. You are relaxed, you are an awesome person, and you will hugely succeed in life no matter what happens on this particular exam. Now, this Zen countenance was sometimes a bit tough for me as someone who can't meditate even if my life depended on it. So if you want, you could also try a trick that a coach once taught me when I'm nervous. Instead of trying to relax and fighting the nerves, instead just lean in and get psyched. Be like, come on, test, is that all you got? I'm gonna crush you, and even if I don't, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger, so I win either way. And with that attitude, you will dive headfirst into the exam and put your excited mind toward the next tip, which is to scan the whole test first before you dig into that first actual question. Get a full sense of what's even in this puppy. Plan out how you're going to use your time. And maybe if there are essay questions or big long form problems at the end, you could even look ahead to those and start jotting down the first few notes that come to your mind for how you might want to approach it, so that you've planted the seeds in your mind that can start germinating for when you finally come back to those essay questions at the end of the short answer or multiple choice ones. My main point here is that planning holistically up front, seeing the whole obstacle course, will help you to strategize on how to tackle the individual challenges so that you can dominate on this exam. It's much better than just diving straight into the first question, barely even reading the instructions, and then just blindly starting to write in a panic. Which brings me to my last tip, which is to manage your time. Once you've finished scanning and planning up front, write down how long you can afford to spend on each section, leaving a few minutes of breathing room at the end to check your work before turning it in, if you do have time. This way, you can keep an eye on the clock and know when it might be a good time to wrap up one section and move on to the next, even if you're not quite done. You can always come back to that tough section at the end if you have time, but you can't just manufacture new time to tackle a new section at the end that you haven't even started by the time the clock runs out. If you do happen to find yourself running out of time, still, don't panic. If you're on a multiple choice exam, you could always resort to just scanning the questions high level and making quick educated guesses if that's really what it comes down to. And even if it's an essay test or short answer problems, you might still be able to get some partial credit for just writing some of the key terms or formulas that you would have elaborated on if you'd had more time to write. Since a lot of instructors are more concerned about whether you know the content and can check the boxes than if you can get it perfectly polished in a short amount of time, especially if it's not really an English class or something. Altogether, these tips should help you to take the knowledge that you acquired from your studies and ensure that you can demonstrate it in a way that gets you the test scores that you deserve. Still, I should caution that at the end of the day, there's really only so much that test-taking hacks can do for you if you don't know the material well. And this is why you should subscribe to the Brainscape channel here for tons more advice on how to actually study better, learn faster, get more motivated, and stay focused for longer periods of time. Because if you can do all of those things, then you'll be able to rise to any challenge.